record. And
Yeah, see, you can always find things by moving your cursor.
yes. So I would just want to make sure we are recording. Doesn't it tell us?
I have a flashing red arrow,
Yes,
flashing red button.
Let's see what it says.
we are recording because it gives me the pause recording option. So that means we are recording. So
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
Okay.
Kitchen cleanup.
thank you so much.
this
Okay.
is recording and I don't think they can edit it. Oh.
Yeah, so we can see the slides. I'm gonna get out of here a little bit.
Can you see the slide, Bob?
I can see, oh, George, you're perfect. You're right in the center there. You're looking younger every day.
Can
How old are you, George?
you see the slide?
I can see all the slides.
And it's recording.
Oh, okay.
How old are you, George, these days?
This picture was taken in,
No, he asked, how old are you?
oh, I'm only 84 years old.
That's good.
Maybe I'll come in a little bit.
Well, in case you guys haven't figured it out, the people who are actually going to listen to this, watch this thing, I'm here with George and Joanne Urioste. And if you guys have climbed any trad routes at Red Rocks, you'll undoubtedly climbed a route that they've put in. Frogland, Crimson Chrysalis, Dreams of Wild Turkey, epinephrine, Levitation 29, Olive Oil. They're just a few of their better climbs, but they've climbed hundreds out there and they're all first ascents. But today we're not going to talk about Red Rocks. There's an excellent kind of guidebook interested in the history of some of the more famous Red Rocks climbs by Larry D'Angelo, and his Red Rock Odyssey is the name of it. And also there's Joanne's original guidebook, which gives quite a bit of history, which actually is still available from Joanne. I understand you've got a few cases in the garage. But today we'd like to talk about the time before Red Rocks. I first met George at Barnes Field in New Hampshire. Barnes Field at the time was an overflow and group campsite for Dolly Cop, a White Mountain National Forest campground in Pinkham Notch, just off of Route 16 in the shadow of Mount Washington. At the time, it was free to camp there. My partner and I had just narrowly averted being benighted on a 10-pitch first ascent on a cliff called Mount Willard. We had grossly underestimated the height of the cliff and started way up too late. We topped out around 11 p.m., stumbled back to the car on the hiking trail, and drove around to Barnes Field for the free camping, and perhaps more important, for the fact that we wouldn't be hassled for putting our tent up at 1 a.m. This was July or August of 1966. The next morning, we crawled out of our tent, and of all things, two climbers were next door cooking breakfast. George Urioste was one of those two. In 1966, to randomly meet another climber was nearly unheard of anywhere outside of a crag or one of the rare climbing stores that existed at the time. In 1966, I immediately liked George. Positive outlook, supportive personality, and a go-for-it mentality inspired me to no end, and we immediately became friends. George was born in Chile and moved to Sucre, Bolivia at the age of 3. He was raised in Sucre and went to Spain for his education at age 17 when he joined the Jesuits. Until 1952, his family was among the wealthiest in Bolivia. The revolution of 1952 destroyed the economy and greatly affected all Bolivians. So, George, how old were you? And was there a specific event that attracted you to the mountains?
Yeah, mostly it began when I was in Spain. I moved from Bolivia in 55, and I went by Buenos Aires in a very epic ship trip that took about 3 weeks to cross the Atlantic. We followed all the coast of Brazil. Then we went to the Canary Islands. Oh no, first we stopped in Africa. Then the Canary Islands, then Lisbon, then finally to the Strait of Magellan, of Gibraltar. You see, 84. And then we finally landed in Barcelona, Spain. Then I went to continue my studies to become a priest. I was not a priest yet, of course, just studying for the priesthood. And I went to Raimat. During the summers, we spent practically 3 months in the Pyrenees every year for 2 years. And that gave me a chance to do high-speed hiking and scrambling in the Pyrenees.
Up to class 4.
Yeah,
So
and it was lots of fun. At this point, I was honored by being given a pair of Triquoni boots that weighed a ton. And I had to stop from time to time to make sure that the nails that went through the sole would not destroy your feet. But it was fun. One of the things that we used to have is free afternoons. Then it was a matter of speed to be able to climb as much as we could in the few hours that we had free. And then on occasion, we had a whole day of hiking, and then we could do some of the mountains like the Puzettes, Aneto, and other of the peaks that were in the Aragonese Pyrenees where we were housed. I stayed there for 2 years in Raimat, near Lerida, Spain.
So you went back to Bolivia as a Jesuit priest, correct?
Well, it took a while first. While I was
Okay.
in Lerida, I learned Catalan and I spoke Catalan fluently. And then I moved to Barcelona to study philosophy as part of the training for the priesthood. And I stayed in Barcelona from 57 to 59. At that point, the vacations were in Mallorca. There was no climbing, just a lot of scary swimming in the Mediterranean. Then the Jesuits wanted to go from the US to Bolivia to help with the work there. And then my superiors decided to send a Bolivian to join them to the Chicago province. Then I was sent to the US from France, from the Le Havre, in a luxury ship this time. Took only 3 days to cruise the Atlantic. It was atomic powered. It was one of the best ships of the area. Very bad in a sense because all the menus were in English and my English was still very rudimentary. Then my eating was less than spectacular. And I landed in New York, and then soon after they sent me over to Indiana. I spent 1 year in Indiana, 59 to 60, and we were housed in West Baden College. It used to be a luxury hotel, still exists today. It belonged at one point to Al Capone, and the Jesuits have acquired it for $1. It's spectacular. If you go to inline now, you look at it, it's the most spectacular dome that you have ever seen in the US. And I was an older student, then I got the best room in the place, and I was very appreciated. No climbing there. The only thing that we did plenty was working in the woods, just chopping wood, making fires. And I had one bad story to tell.
not too much more climbing.
Oh, no, okay, no climbing. Okay, no bad stories, okay?
No.
Then at the end.
George, just only bad climbing stories.
Right,
Yeah, stick to
okay.
the climbing because we
Okay,
have so much.
But you told me once that you carried all the sacraments up to 21,000 feet and
That came
Yeah.
later.
the highest high mass in the world or
We're
something.
gonna show a slide of that.
That
But
came later.
Okay.
let him jump to Boston where he
Yeah,
started
let me go a little
climbing.
bit faster
Oh,
because
it's okay. Get to Boston first.
I'm talking too much. Okay, in 1960, June, I left the US for Bolivia, where I was going to spend 4 years. I stopped briefly in Ecuador and we just hiked Tungurahua, one of the mountains there, went to Bolivia, and there I met my good friend, Gustavo Iturralde, and then we began seriously climbing in the Andes. And then we climbed from 60 to 64.
With ropes and
But very primitive.
ropes and crampons and ice axe.
Yeah, very primitive
belaying.
equipment. For the sleeping bags, we just sewed up blankets.
Yeah, but you had technical gear.
Oh yeah, and I have a 12-point Grivel crampons that were forged, and that gave me access to many of the nevados. And we climbed up to 20,000, a few of the local peaks with Gustavo. At this point, I was not a priest yet. I was still studying for the priesthood. And then in 64, I was sent back to the US, this time to Weston College outside of Boston, where I met my best friend, Joe Bowden. And then he had been climbing already in the gunks. And then we just started climbing seriously from 64 to 68 when I moved to Ithaca. And that's when I met you, of course, during those years.
Okay, let's go.
All right.
So do you remember what your first reasonably big climb in New England was? Was it on Cannon, Cathedral, Whitehorse, some other cliff?
Yeah, right. We did Whitehorse, and Cannon is the thing that really caught my attention most because of the size. And also the fact that being exfoliating, you realize that many of the climbs that you would do then would not be there in the future. And I really love Cannon for that reason. And the Gunks was the place that we went many weekends. And we never climbed very hard, by the way. 5'8" was maybe our limit.
Pretty much everybody's limit in the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could climb 5'8" that you hadn't climbed before, you were in the top 5% of the climbers in the United States. It's pretty hard to believe, but that's
By
the
the way,
truth.
with my Gunks years, I just found a bunch of letters written by Steve Arsenault from Vietnam to me. And in one of the letters, he describes a fall that I took in one of the climbs. It was a big fall that I took by being careless. And I had a layback and I took a big whopper and I landed on the ledge.
40 feet under the ground.
Well, it was a ledge. Yeah, those letters, by the way, are
It's onto the
fantastic.
ground because it was on wrist.
Yeah,
Wrist is like, the crux is 40 feet above the ground. You
Yeah, it
fell
was-
into the ground.
yeah.
Yep,
And I'm going to send those letters to Steve because he probably will appreciate them.
yeah.
Or written from the combat zone. It was really extraordinary letters.
So Joanne, did you want to show some slides of the
Yep, we
Bolivia
have
thing?
slides.
Let's start
So,
moving, yeah.
Let's
I can get my face in here in the
see
screen.
if we can get a slide on the show.
So George digitized these old slides. They were starting to get faded, some of them. And I did my best to decipher what was written on them. This one is Cannon Mountain in January.
Okay, well, I thought we had the slide of the high mass.
Yeah, that's
That will
coming.
come.
That's coming. I have to, where's my cursor? Okay, here. Oh, okay. Just a second here.
How do you move to the next
I'm
slide?
trying to get my cursor to move so that I can control this. Oh,
Here.
just a second. Just a second. Here it is. Okay. So this is Cannon.
Approaching Cannon.
Approach slopes. So in order to get to the base of Cannon, you had to,
Yeah, you need to do a share screen, I think, because I can't see anything except the
you can't
overview. Correct, yeah.
You can't see the photos?
That is correct.
Oh,
Oh,
you are screen sharing, it says. Shall I just keep going and hope that it gets recorded?
no.
Let me do a share screen. No, you have disabled participant screen sharing, but you're not sharing your screen either.
Oh,
Okay,
What I see is all of the pictures in very small format.
oh, no. That's
well,
no
maybe
good.
we can go through part of this and then see if we have recorded it. You want to do that?
Let's just test it, yeah.
Well-
But the slides are really awesome. We have
Yeah,
about 60
it would be
of them.
nice for you to see them. I don't know, did you see them yesterday? Did I go through them?
Yes, you got them on the screen yesterday.
Why don't we just go through them? Previously, there's a snow cave at the base of Cannon in January 67. Then George, you describe that one?
That's another picture with Joe Baldwin when we were exploring the first ascents.
That's in January 67, so almost a year prior to your first ascent of Cannonade. This is George leading on the first attempt on Cannonade in January 67. And it looks like the conditions were pretty icy. Do you
Yeah.
remember the conditions,
Yeah,
George?
but I mean, if we don't have pictures, it's useless. We should be able
It's
to.
very likely that this is being recorded. So I'm just saying,
If you can see them, my guess is it's being recorded that way.
yeah.
That's only a guess though, because I don't know that much about Zoom.
So
Okay,
why don't we keep on going
okay,
at
and
this
see what
point?
happens.
And-
Absolutely.
And then this one is also January 67. It says before they bailed on that route, they had to bail, probably because of the weather. Sounds
Weather
like-
was horrendous.
It will tell us about the weather.
Well, at that point, it was close to zero, the weather, and the winds were very, very high. And I had a bivouac with Al Rubin and Dave Isles in that attempt.
Holy
And we
shit.
had to spend the night in the middle of the face.
Holy shit. Yeah.
And then we had to retrieve the next day, and the ropes were like 5 inches thick with brine and ice, and it was quite a chore to be able to come down without killing yourself.
Was that the time they had to chip a hole into your
Yeah,
iced beard?
Yes,
His
we did
beard
some-
was so icy, they had to put an ice
yeah.
screw in
Well,
there.
we had this big, walrus types of tongues. I mean, like horns going down, and my mouth was shut. I could barely breathe. But then with an ice screw, I just made a hole and I shoved some peanuts and raisins, and it was my breakfast.
Yeah, I heard about that many times. So here's that view. Then just a quick shot of rock climbing gear. And this was taken in fall of 1966. This one is the first winter ascent with Bob. So Bob Hall, George, and Joe Bowden. And that you did the first winter ascent on the 21st of December of 67. So Bob,
See how lucky I am for you?
what kind of temps did you have? You had good weather, right?
We had weather, we had virtually, well, you can see, I think in some of the other pictures and some of the pictures that I have, I mean, we're climbing in shirt sleeves.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
don't have crampons and and you have,
And there was we pulled into Boise Rock and there was another two people who pulled out in their car and they looked at us and we looked at them and they grabbed their packs and they went running across the road and turns out they were doing the first winter ascent of Sam Swang song.
Right,
I
just to the
remember
right-
you wrote that.
To the right of us, yeah.
And here you can see a piton that's tied off. That looks like
Yeah,
like a soft iron piton, like an
Yeah.
old army surplus one.
That's your golden leading.
Okay, so this one is George climbing on the twin corners on your first winter ascent of Cannonade. So then this is just an example of the base camp in 1967. This shows George and Joe Bowden climbing at Ragged Mountain with an old-fashioned hip belay, which doesn't look like he could catch George. It was harder to catch people with that method. So there's George and Steve Arsenal,
That's
in
just before he went to Vietnam.
January of 68. But I read those letters too, George, and I think he was in Vietnam in 67, but he came back and forth. And
Yes.
he wrote letters to you that when he had like a 2-week furlough that he would
Right,
want to
right.
climb. So he was really, really motivated to climb. I think it kept him.
But many of the
psyched.
letters were written from Vietnam.
Well, that's
yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
But he said, "Oh, I'm going to be home for 2 weeks. I want to climb."
right.
So this is Old Cannon and an attempt in January 68, George Al Rubin and an unknown British climber. Here's another attempt. Well, another picture of the attempt in January 68. That's George.
How high did you get on that Old Cannon attempt? Do you remember?
I would say about 3 pitches up or so.
So it's like the second, what they call second cow pasture or something?
Yeah.
Second terrace?
At the cow pastures, right.
Yeah.
Now we're jumping to Pinnacle Gully in January 68. This is a belay stance in a snowstorm. And George is chopping chopping steps up Pinnacle Gully. It must have been horrendous.
It's the last time that we chopped. Yeah, after that, we did all front pointing.
And then here's a good shot looking down Pinnacle Gully. A group of 3 step chopping technique. It just looked just very badass. A lot of suffering.
I wish I knew what picture you're on, because
Oh,
I know number 19 on my screen. I got the little tiny pictures. Number 19, it doesn't look like Pinnacle. It looks more like Odell's.
it said Pinnacle on the slides.
Yeah, but it's got to be Odell's.
So
I don't know about 18, but 19 is definitely not Pinnacle because it's way
Pinnacle is way narrower.
wide.
okay. Well,
Pinnacle is
well, one
narrower.
or the other. So now we're on photo 20. And it says Pinnacle Gully with Al Rubin and George in this picture. So they're very frozen. It looks like they really got their challenges that day. So okay. So now did you want to ask another question before we go on?
Well, I'm not sure exactly where we are, but
The problem, yeah.
I guess. Oops! Suddenly I lost. What did I lose there? Oh my God.
I went to a different folder of slides.
Okay, yeah.
Wash your-
What's on my screen is the little tiny pictures. So
Yeah.
where did you get your gear? This is one of the questions that Todd Swain was interested in.
Yeah,
Where
well,
did you get all your gear in those days in the
Right.
mid-60s?
there was a store in Boston. I forgot the name.
A mountaineering supply?
Yeah, I think it was that. And then I
Did you
got,
say it again, Bob?
I think it was called Mountaineering Supply. It was
Hearing
yeah,
supply,
most
okay.
likely, yeah. that-
it eventually morphed into Eastern Mountain Sports after.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's way before it's a mountain sport.
Yeah.
And then for shoes, it was Peter Limmer's in New Hampshire.
And REI were for mail order, Hollybar and Camp Trails in Manhattan.
Yeah.
At Peter Limmer's, I got double boots that were made for the 63 Everest expedition. And he sold them in New Hampshire. And those boots lasted me for years. They were very good.
What were the boots that I got? The double boots? Do you remember?
Yeah, you have what the Lowell's? I don't
Yeah, probably
remember.
low. It wasn't the Hablers.
No. Could have been Heblas.
No, it wasn't the Hablers.
Yeah, but they were size 9.
Yeah, it was terrible, too big for me. So okay, well, we could go into this. It says here,
Yeah, let's go into Odell's there. That's a good place. I like Odell's.
That's what that was.
yeah, this is Odell's, and you could really see it. Pinnacle is obscured by the pine tree, but here's Odell's, and as you say, it's wider. But okay, this is actually Rich Mathis over here, and that's me. And I have this labeled as January 71. It possibly could have been November of 1970, because as soon as I met George, he immediately taught me how to ice climb.
You were 18.
And I was 18 in this picture, and he took me ice climbing every weekend and every vacation.
In all the times that you went ice climbing with George Joanne,
Yeah.
did you ever meet another woman climbing?
No.
Ice climbing?
No,
Never.
no.
It's one of the things that is. And did you lead on ice in the 70s?
Easier leads, but George
Easier, yeah.
was roping.
Yeah, but as I say, the only other woman that I know, well, two others, was Mary Jane Cross, who I climbed with extensively in the 70s and 80s, and then Laura Waterman, but she didn't lead. She just, I just guess she led
Yeah.
easier stuff. I don't know, but she climbed with Guy, of course, and I don't ever remember a other woman ice climbing
Well,
anything significant at all.
Ice climbing was important because it was a strength to be able to climb the big mountains. I wanted to climb big mountains.
Yeah.
So I wasn't in love with ice climbing per se, but it was one of the necessary skills that you had to have. So
Unnecessary evils, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, that was one of the big differences is today a lot of climbers are, they're just rock climbers and that's all they want to be. And that's every, but in those days, it was like always moving towards climbing in the big mountains. And
It was alpinism.
yeah.
That's what it was.
Now
So-
George did it backwards. He started climbing in the big mountains and then he went down to rock climbing.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to rock climb, but I met George in October of 1970, and the winter came early in that season. So by November, it was just freezing and storms were coming. So we had to ice climb. So that's what he did. He took me down to the local automotive shop, and he had me bend the axe. So you'll talk about that too, probably. I don't want to talk about it now, but
When shall we? Well, let's go through some of these slides. You got Pinnacle. You've got
Yeah.
this axe was already,
like Harvard Hut, Joanna Lone, and Edmund's Call.
yeah.
My God.
So
that's
so
right.
this
Tell us
talk
about
a little
those.
bit about this axe. This axe was wooden, and Rich Mathis told me to wrap it with tape because that would increase the strength of it. You know, while we were doing ice axe fillets in the mountains, he said it had, the breaking strength would be improved if I taped it. And this came straight, but George had me bend it and file notches in it by hand. So it took me a long time to do that.
Yeah, I wish I could see it. Your cursor on my screen, your cursor is still stuck on Odell's Gully, and it's got a
Yeah, this
circle
is
like it's trying to open it.
picture number 3. George is leading. It looks bad.
When the color
It looks
you know.
really windy and cold.
It's like Huntington Ravine, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, Odell's was first climbed by Noel Odell, the last person to see a Mallory alive on Everest.
Really?
So, yeah.
He
yeah.
was some bad.
He was a teacher, I think, at Oxford or
Yeah,
Cambridge.
all
And
the
he-
climbers were intellectuals, you know, and even when I got into climbing in 1970, all the people were like mathematicians, physicists,
engineers.
yeah, engineers, just
Engineers,
chemists,
chemists.
and all of them like
Odell came over to do a 2-year kind of like visiting professorship at Harvard, and snatched up the first ascent of the gully that's now named Odell's Gully.
very nice. So here's Pinnacle. Now in April, it was spring break for George and I in 71, and spring break was the end of March through the beginning of April. And
Weather was fantastic.
the weather was perfect. All the gullies were fat with ice, and we climbed all of them very, very fast. And we were the only ones who had curved tools. So we were like, oh shit, we're just like running up these things, and everybody else is like, wow. So this is how beautiful Pinnacle looked at that time.
Yeah.
And this is that same day,
Beautiful, yeah.
Pinnacle, the upper part of it. And this is the Harvard Hut. This is me. I think this might have been December of 1970, but it looked cold. So it probably was not spring break.
They're pretty stingy with the wood in Harvard Hut.
It's pretty stingy with what?
They're pretty stingy with the wood in Harvard.
Oh, yeah, but not that day. On this day, I made pizza for all the badass mountain men, and they really liked it. So when I had gone to Knowles,
Is this the Harvard Hut that's up in the ravine, or is this the one that's on Route 16?
yes, in Huntington Ravine.
Yeah.
So I knew how to make pizza on coals. So that's what I did. And then they
Pretty good.
they allowed me
yeah.
to use all the wood I wanted. So this is that we did the traverse of the presidential, and I should let you talk too if you want. 'Cause I'm talking too much.
Talking's fine.
It's the traverse of the presidentials, northern and southern,
Yeah.
which we did in winter break of 1971 to 72. So this was obviously like very stormy and snowy, and of course we couldn't have done it unless we had shelters, because we learned that the winds were over 120 miles per hour, which we learned because of the weather station up there on Mount Washington. And we took shelter in that basement there in the weather station. But this was one of our
Edmonds Coal Shelter.
Yeah, and if you look carefully, you can see our ice axes. The orange one and the purple one is mine. And we always had a leash on our ice axes. We were always afraid to drop an ice axe because we knew that dropping an ice axe would mean death in the mountains. So we didn't want to drop it. Here's George. It says here, high winds, top of Mount Washington, getting close to the top, carrying snowshoes, which we used for the Southern presidentials. Then here's me
The summit.
at the summit. I think, I don't know why I'm carrying these bottles, maybe to scoop up snow for melting, probably. But in the basement of one of these houses, there was a little shelter for anybody who needed it. So that was fantastic. But the shelter had gauges of the temperature and the winds. So we learned a little bit from that, because then when we hit really bad winds in the mountains, we could remember this time and then gauge the winds accordingly.
Yeah.
And this is a picture of me and George on the top. The slide didn't duplicate very well, but it was a good memory here.
Oh, that one, okay, that one's hidden underneath the little pictures of the people, of us.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, so we're gonna click out of that. The next group would be New Hampshire, Ithaca, Vermont, Adirondacks, and Old Cannon first winter ascent.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. That sounds like a good
Okay,
plan.
okay, I'll click open that one. But there are 18 slides in that.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so this is probably like my first ice climbing session with George. So this is me. And then George was having Bernie Trumpauer and another student, Tom Savitz, under his wing. Do you remember that, George?
Mhm.
So what did you think? That were you grooming some new partners, or were you just being kind to students?
Well, I'm falling in love with you.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Oh, God.
Look at John's shoes of size 9.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Those
Oh.
are my single boots. I
Oh,
didn't get double
okay.
boots yet. I was just
How about
18.
Chivetas
I was
then?
18. I was a starving student, and I have a 90 centimeter ice axe there. And Tom is looking so like a warrior.
I know.
Okay, so this is me at Watkins Glen, which is not too far from Ithaca. It's the Finger Lakes area, and Watkins Glen has
Excellent water
incredible
ice.
ice.
Great
And
water ice.
I had more photos, but somebody didn't return them, so I don't have them anymore. But man, the ice was so incredible. So many different colors, like green and light blues and dark blues, and incredible ice falls.
Beautiful water ice.
So
Yeah.
this is Bjorn Schellenberg and me in
Watkins Glen.
Watkins Glen. Okay. This is Watkins Glen. George is,
No, that's Ithaca. I know that's Ithaca.
yeah, but it says Watkins Glen here. It
Oh.
was written on the
Oh, okay,
slide.
Watkins Glen, sorry.
So George is trying out a technique of putting aiders on his ice tools.
Yeah, George didn't really have those big bicep muscles to hang off his axes,
He
huh?
could do 6 one-arm pull-ups. Okay, we move on. First
Move on.
winter.
But that's actually quite a historic photo. I mean, if that was taken in January of 1971, it's a
It could have been earlier, seriously. It could have been December of 1970. I wouldn't even be surprised, because that's when George, I probably should change the date.
well, George, was it before or after we did Old Cannon? That's an easy thing, because Old Cannon was the end of December 70, January 1st, 71.
I think it was after.
Well, we could look at the crampon points. If they're worn down, then
No, we're talking about
after.
getting it down within a matter of weeks.
Yeah, it looks like his crampons are
Right,
long,
right.
so I don't think he did Old Cannon yet, because they wore
Probably
off.
not, yeah.
So it looks like really sharp points there. So anyway, let's just say it was in 1970, end of 1970. Here's George. This is on your climb. The old,
Again, I bring good weather, right?
yes,
Yeah, right.
Old
It was
Cannon.
was a little chilly and windy, but the weather was pretty good except for the last day.
Yeah.
Then I left,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so George is on the first winter ascent of Old Canyon, which occurred on the 1st of January of 1971, New
That's with
Year's of
Bob, yeah.
71, with Bob and George and Rich Mathis, right?
Yep.
So here is
See,
the
much
lower part.
less ice than other times, yeah.
So here's somebody on the ledge down here. Here's the diagonal rope. And here is another person, and here's another person. So you have the three people, the belayer, this one is climbing, and this one is waiting down here. Then it says here, Rich Mathis, leading middle pitches.
Mhm.
Then we have,
Yeah, those are the pitches just above the second terrace.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
but then
Yeah.
you told me that the good weather stopped and you were hit with a storm.
Yeah, that's the last day.
George is leading to the top of the climb in a storm, and it looks bad.
Oh, well, you saw the video of it that I
Yeah,
sent you.
send the
I mean, there's snow swirling all over the place. It's pretty amazing.
video on that.
This looks very heroic, pushing to the top in this craziness. Oh, sorry.
That's about
Okay, so
But this was your third time trying it. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever mentioned that you'd tried it a couple of times before.
Yeah, we failed, but with you, we succeeded, man.
so this is
Like I
Chapel
said.
Island in February 71. That's a base camp in the woods. And then this shows my axe before I shortened it. It's 90 centimeters long, and it does have a curved pick. And George had me file notches in it by hand with a little hand file. This is Bjorn Schellenberg. And we still see Bjorn from time to time. So we've kept in touch with him. This is me cleaning an ice screw. Apparently I'm happy. And this is me climbing with a single tool. So I had to balance in between moves. And soon
What the action?
soon I acquired enough money to buy another tool and to shorten that axe by sawing it off. And I had to hand file a taper. I had to taper it, the wooden shaft to put the is it called
The ferrule, the
a
ferrule.
ferrule, the ferrule. Okay, George is leading.
Two
Chapel
tools.
Pond.
That's two tools already. That's 71.
Do you remember the name? It was like a Sigmund
Yeah.
Sigmund Freud or something.
Charlie Moser.
Charlie Moser. There's George.
I have a hammer and these.
Okay, then we're moving on to Cannon Mountain, January 72, another attempt. So we'll just have that one picture there.
What'd you try then there? More interesting
He
stuff.
went there with me, and I probably said I was too cold.
Well, what were you going to try to do?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Oh,
By Lakeview on the right or something, yeah.
well, that would have been good.
This is Smuggler's Notch in 73, January 73. Smuggler's Notch.
It was very cold.
Okay, so now you were going to ask about
That's Ithaca.
some other things. We didn't have any
Yeah. What some of the other stuff that you did around Ithaca in the early 70s?
So this is Buttermilk Falls in Ithaca. And this particular falls had multiple steps. So this is the main pitch that we did. And then we walked.
This is summertime, of course.
Yeah, it went horizontal, and then we had another step, and then it went horizontal, and we had another step. So we had multiple steps of frozen waterfalls. And when we came back down to the base, this whole thing had fallen down.
The whole thing collapsed.
The whole thing was just in blocks at the base.
The thing that we did, we were being always followed by the police, and they wanted to give us fines. Then we were very sneaky. We said, there's no cops, let's do it. The only problem is in the climbing, anytime you put your axe, you will go through the ice onto the waterfall, and then the water will just shoot like crazy.
Yeah.
And
I
they say,
remember
come
that.
on, move, go, move. And as Joanne said, when we came down and looked at it, the whole thing was gone.
sloughed off. Yeah, I'm glad we didn't die.
Could have died there.
So then here's oh, sorry, that we just saw.
Yeah,
Okay, that we saw.
they're going
Wait,
back.
oh, sorry,
They're
that,
going backward.
okay.
Going
I don't
back.
know why I have, oh, wait, oh, you know why? Because this batch is done. Okay. So
Yes, sir. You don't show those, yeah.
that batch is done. Now we will do the Katahdin batch, or did you
Well,
have?
a couple of questions for George. And most of these came from Todd Swain. A question he had was, did you ever know Dave Bernays? Did you ever bump into Dave Bernays as a climber, ice climbing or winter?
It doesn't ring a bell at this point. I knew Dave Isles quite well, and we climbed quite
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
And also your other friends, so Joe Bowden, Dave Isles,
And
Jim Strom, right?
Jim
Yep.
Strom,
Paul Doyle.
Paul Doyle, but Paul Doyle, we did a lot of rock. We spent the whole summer in the Circle of Towers with Paul Doyle.
Then Al Rubin,
Al Rubin,
Sam Stribert, ever?
met him, but we never climbed
And-
together.
And then,
Yeah.
let's see. Who else did you climb with?
And just try to think.
Steve Arsenal.
Pete Skates.
And you didn't know anybody of the other names, Clarence Bell, Larry Nolan, George Smith. You didn't know any of those?
No, just heard the names.
And
Yeah,
Rich Matt.
yeah.
But, you know, I was talking to Paul Doyle. I think you told me once that Paul Doyle mentioned something like, you know, Cannonade, if you can climb it in the rain, and you can probably climb it in the winter. And I always thought that was your inspiration for climbing, you know, for trying to do a winter ascent to Cannonade.
Could have been. No, but with Paul, we spent the whole summer in the Wind Rivers.
Ah,
It was Paul Doyle,
Oh,
Jim
And
Strom.
Bjorn Schellenberg, another of your
Yeah,
climbing friends.
Bjorn
Yeah.
Schellenberg went to the Bugaboos.
yeah. Well, I was in on that trip on the Bugaboos too. I met Bourne there with you guys.
Right.
Yeah, we did. I remember Brenton Aspire. We did. It was one of the climbs. So you went into Katahdin early, right? Sometime in '74, I guess it was.
74.
And in those days, that was quite the expedition. You really had to start from pretty far out and carry all your gear and
To bring
carry
gear in a sled.
ground axes and things.
Plus George and I were gonna go in, just the two of us, but the Rangers wouldn't let us.
Yeah.
To be a group of 4.
So
Yeah.
they teamed us up with these other two guys, Mike Gilbert and Misha Kirk. So they became, assigned to the same group as we did. And Mike Gilbert became a lifelong friend.
Right.
So and Mike
Good.
Gilbert ended up doing a climb together with George of a noteworthy route that was almost 2,000 feet long.
That was the first ascent.
The
Yeah.
first ascent.
Well, let's go into the Katahdin slides and see what we see
Yeah.
there.
Sure. Here we go. This is the team. Slide 1 shows Misha Kirk here on the left, then George, me, and Mike Gilbert. And our packs were very, very heavy. We packed in for a week, and they probably weighed at least 75 pounds.
It was heavy.
It was very, very heavy. Then this is a picture of Katahdin, the summit here, and the Piggy Wiggy route went down these ice flows here, which went all the way into the bowl. And that was water ice 4. And maybe the distance between the bottom of the bowl and the top is 2,000 feet, I think. I checked the
Not
topo
2,000.
map. I checked the topo map, and it looked like just
Temperature was super cold.
so I was in that team of 3, Mike Gilbert, George, and I, but it was 30 below 0 with wind. And I felt so much pain in my feet. I abandoned the climb, and these guys went up and they did it. And it was an incredible achievement, in my opinion.
At
The,
those temperatures, the ice axes just kind of bounce off the ice, right?
just, everything just shatters like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like glass.
You just
Oh,
keep
yeah.
trying until you get some more
It shatters.
malleable ice, and then you can hook your tool.
So a couple,
Yeah.
they came down in the dark, by the way, we were very worried for them.
That's all
And
day.
it was, it's a real mountain, Katahdin.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I've been there a couple of times. Never in the winter. I've never gone in the winter.
And a couple days later, then we went up, and this was the four of us. We went to climb Katahdin by a more moderate route, which was still not completely easy. And then we traversed
whole
across the
mountain.
whole ridge, the Knife Edge Ridge, and did Pomola Peak, and then came down some other way. But
That's a long
we
day.
we had to belay in sections of it and had to rappel, and here you could see the ice everywhere, and it was also very brutal weather. You could see the the badassness of the Rhine. So
Yeah,
there's,
I mean that the climb from the Chimney Notch to Pomola Peak is, even in the summer, is pretty technical.
yeah, and this was,
I mean, they have hikers do it, but it's solid class 3
yep, here's Mike.
gambling.
This is actually me.
Yeah, the face mask.
This is me standing up on the ridge, and I think this photo might have been reversed left to right, but that's, I think, Pomola
Yeah,
Peak. We're looking
Pomola.
towards it. So look at all this knife edge we had to do, which we did. And this is one of the rappels along that traverse, and you can see how the rock is all full of rime.
Rhine.
Back at the cabin, which was a nice
Warm
little
up.
cabin, we had good wood, and but it looks like we're wasted. We're not
Yeah,
smiling.
the sad thing is, Mike Gilbert took tons of pictures, and he gave them all to Misha Kirk,
Misha.
and Misha never gave them back.
And Misha died at a young age, so the photos were not available.
Mm.
So anyway, I'm
Check
not
it out.
sure how we figured this out, but either somebody lent us a sled or
No, we
something.
have a sled.
We had
yeah.
one?
Yeah,
Well, it was a lot easier to put your weight on a sled.
I was heavy
And-
back.
Okay,
That's a
so
summer.
that's the end of Katahdin. And then I think one of your questions was, did we climb anything else after New England? So we didn't go back to New England for ice climbing, but we did do an ice climb in the Ruby Mountains of northern Nevada,
That was so
which was
scary.
in Lemoyne Canyon. It was probably a first ascent, I assume, because we didn't really know much about this. Here, we're kind of looking,
That's Lemoyne
this
Canyon.
way would be south, and this direction is south. Lemoyne Canyon, you enter in from Elko, you go down, what, maybe here you enter in from Elko. Okay, so to the best of our knowledge, it might have either been this gully, but I think it was more
It was a
slabby.
face, a slab.
So let's just say it was here,
It was slab, it was roller gully.
and it was all, it was rock that had been iced up, and it was 3 pitches. And you can tell a little bit about that.
Yeah.
George.
Pitch 1 and 2, they were okay because, the ice was deep enough, you could take your tools and your crampons. And then the last pitch, I was very stupid. It was just verglass. It was not thicker than half an inch. And then I had to run it out. I couldn't down climb in balance. I should have down climbed and just take a little fall, but I kept going and I became
But
desperate.
I think you were afraid of ripping out the anchor.
Yeah.
If you had,
Yeah. Oh,
because
yeah.
already the anchor wasn't so solid, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
It was the most scary ice climb I ever done. Just tick, tick, and just the points of the crampons, just tiptoe, just hook your
because
toe
we
and
knew
stand
that
up.
if one person slipped, then that was the
Yeah.
end of
Of course,
everything.
the angle probably was about 75 or so. Then it wasn't really that vertical, but it was really scary.
But anyway, that was, I think, I didn't really do any serious like ice climbing after that. I'm not sure if that scared me away, but I think more, I love the rock climbing in Red Rock, so that's one of the reasons why I didn't.
But then you climbed in Peru.
Well, I climbed in Peru and also Bolivia.
But mountain ice is very different.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's been quite an interesting time down memory lane. I wish I could have seen the pictures up front and personal, but you know,
Well, maybe we'll have to do another one just for you.
I know.
something like something on your end, because I keep on getting this that host disabled participant screen sharing, and I gotta believe there's something in there that you needed to click on for me to see more than I've been seeing, but
Well,
if
I'm
it-
hoping,
if
Bob,
the
that
the
this is
recorded
actually
version has
recorded.
the,
Well, it's-
has them, I'll just listen to the recorded version.
Yeah, I'm gonna, okay, so
Stop
shall we
recording.
end it then?
I think we should end it. Yeah, I don't know if to say, I think most of the
Thank
questions
you for
are answered.
The motivation behind this,
I know.
fantastic. So I'll stop recording.